I'm Michael Lake. I'm with the AFDCS Board of Directors and also the AFDCS Education Group. Thank you all for coming. And I want to extend a very special welcome as well to some non-collectors that we have on board from the JFK Museum on Cape Cod, as well as the JFK Library in Boston. So it's a pleasure to have you all joining us as well for this. We are very fortunate to have Henry Scheuer here, who is the preeminent expert on Scott 1246, the 5-cent JFK Memorial Commemorative, issued in 1964. It was one of the first issues with a nationwide release, and obviously something that was a great honor for the late president and garnered a lot of public attention. Henry's got a great presentation on deck for us, showcasing a lot of covers from his collection, a lot of good stories, and something that I think will be of interest to both beginning collectors, intermediates, experts, and non-collectors. So with that, Henry, I will toss it your way. And then I'll just say too, I'm going to mute everybody's lines. We'll save questions for the end, but we'll be able to go back and reference any covers if you have any questions on those. So from there, Henry, it's all you.
Thank you very much, Mike. As you said, this is the story of the 5-cent John F. Kennedy stamp, how it came to be, and showing various postmarks on May 29th, 1964, the first day of issue nationwide. And yes, our audience today includes postage stamp and first day cover collectors, as well as in the audience are people who are not so interested in philatelic matters, but remember these years and its place in our country's history. Back in 2020, I wrote an article in the American Philatelist titled "Time Stamping the 1960 John F. Kennedy Presidential Campaign." And that's where we're going to start. During the Democratic Convention, which ran from July 1st through July 15th, here are some envelopes addressed to Senator John Kennedy. And here it is on the 14th. We advanced to the first debate held on September 26th. This was in Chicago. The famous speech after Nixon bashed his knee, went to the hospital, came out of the hospital, put on some lazy shave, the famous unshaved Nixon, perspiring. The second debate was held October 7th, and that was in DC. Supposedly Richard Nixon did far better in this debate. The third debate was held in Hollywood, where Nixon was, and in New York with JFK. So here's the New York postmark, and here's the Los Angeles postmark. A word quickly about this archive. The President JFK archive that this is extracted from contained newspaper clippings. There was no clipping service at the time, so the campaign requested that people would send him clippings, newspaper clippings. They were removed, fortunately, so there would be no staining in the envelopes, and that's where these envelopes were pulled from. Then finally, by October 21st, this was the fourth debate. I'm sorry, this was the intended fourth debate, which never happened. Once Kennedy was nominated, Johnson's campaign for president came to an end. And this envelope was repurposed. You see the word vice president in red, and in red type on the left, let's back Jack all the way. So obviously Lyndon Johnson, who is now the vice presidential nominee, jumped on board, and his stationery was repurposed. And of course, here is the fifth debate that never occurred. And we see that typing in the lower left-hand corner. November 8th was election day. Somewhere we just didn't get that cover scanned. That's all right. The next day was November 9th with a very enthusiastic gentleman, Juan Rivera Rosario from San Diego, sending a congratulations message. Well, the campaign, the interregnum period ends, and on January 20th, 1961, Kennedy gets inaugurated Here's an envelope from the White House. It's postmarked White House mailroom. Here you see the bottom center. And it's about as good an inaugural cover as I have. So now we have him inaugurated. He begins to serve his term. Of course, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Bay of Pigs, all these events through his presidency. And it's time to start campaigning for re-election. And he knew he had to shore up his base. So he went to Arkansas on October 3rd, 1963, to dedicate the Greer's Ferry Dam in Arkansas. And this is the first item that we see with the 5-cent Kennedy stamp postmarked in Anchorage, Kentucky, an affluent suburb of Louisville, on May 29th. I can't find a connection between Anchorage, Kentucky, and his appearance at Heber Springs. So he dedicates the dam, and this is the reverse side of that cover. And on the helicopter ride back to Little Rock, Orville Faubus says something along the lines of, "You better be careful, those guys down in Dallas might come down and shoot you." On November 22nd, well, Kennedy did go down to Fort Worth, then flew from Fort Worth to Dallas on the morning of the 22nd of November. He was going to speak at noon, and here's the invitation to that event. The Texas School Book Depository. Again, somebody did affix the stamp and have it postmarked on the first day in Dallas. And he was shot. Here's an envelope, postmarked 11:30 a.m., November 22nd, 1963, not contrived by a collector, but ordinary mail. I know, click full screen, that's all we have, Phyllis. Anyway, we have this at the bottom. Oh my goodness. Anyway, the body lies in state, the 24th of November in Washington. And after that, we really jump to a very critical Post Office Department release. This is General Release 88 on May 4th, 1964. It specifies and details that this stamp will have a designated first day date on May 29th and will be placed on sale nationwide. This was the starting line for all cachet makers to develop their cachets, draw their cachets. All the people who wanted to prepare to submit stamps to be postmarked in Boston, to submit them for first day of issue in advance, they had from May 4th to May 29th. Go, people, go, do your thing. And this photo publicity image gave everyone an idea what the stamp would look like. And that was on the publicity piece. The image on the stamp here is describing the cachet. We see that William Murphy did sign this. And this image, if you look at the stamp and you see the cachet is identical. The stamp was prepared by a 7-man team at the New York firm of Lowy Snaith. They took from January 16th through March 17th to consider over 100 designs. So now the design was selected for the stamp. We know the designated first day date, and it's time to proceed to the activities in Boston where there was going to be a first day of issue ceremony. You had to be invited. Here's the invitation to the luncheon at 12:15. So this was at the Statler Hilton. Once you were invited and you acknowledged that you wanted to participate, they would mail you back your table seating designation. See table 96 in the lower left-hand corner, autographed by the governor of Massachusetts, who was Endicott Peabody at the time. Now everyone goes to lunch. Here's the program at the lunch. This is not the release of the stamp. Program at the lunch with the sequence of events. It's 2 pages in length. And here we see at 1:55, stand by for commencement of television programming. So 2 o'clock, there was TV programming that commenced. John Gronowski was there. Lots of people were there. When you left the luncheon, you received the first day of issue ceremony program. These are moderately available in common. It was a 4-page document with the program of the first day of issue dedicating the stamp. This is after lunch. You've now digested your lunch. Here is the stamp, postmarked first day of issue in Boston. And and then on the reverse cover, the Honorary Citizens Committee. Now, the hotel, the Statler Hilton Hotel, had some events that were ongoing. And here we see the Artcraft variety with the back flap turned up so we can see the executive offices, the Statler Hilton on Artcraft variety. And also there were ambitious collectors who took their cachets, bought the stamps, and went down to the front desk, ran through the timestamp, and got the Statler Hilton timestamp. It's not a postal marking. Here's the letter, dear friend, from the general manager of the Statler Hilton. Now we go to the non-Boston crowd. All those people went to Boston. They listened to the luncheon, received the program. Now it's time for the people who were around the country to be informed about how the stamp was going to be issued. And these lobby posters were available to be obviously posted in the post office lobbies throughout the country. Well, we now have to ship the stamps, don't we? The Bureau of Engraving and Printing is shipping the stamps. You see Bureau of Engraving and Printing to the left and below the large red registered post office department mail from the Bureau of Engraving and Printing to each postmaster, Medina, New York, and the registry number. This was the label from the outside of the wrapping package that contained the stamps. So now you open that up, and of course, I hope you discarded all these labels except this one. And inside you see a nice notification. Please do not, it didn't even say please, do not place these stamps on sale before May 29th, the designated first day date. Very important term in first day cover collecting. After you remove that, you see the cardboard on top of the 5,000 stamps, and you see rubber stamp May 29th, 1964, indicating it's intended for the Kennedy stamp. Now everyone's pretty clear. May 29th, don't open it up. Don't place these stamps on sale. The 25th is before the 29th. Come back later, please. The 25th, the 26th, you're not listening either, are you? The 28th, 29th, you're supposed to be at the 29th. 28th is still the wrong date. You finally got it right on the folded down copy of the lobby poster on the 29th from Washington. Okay, so now we have everybody at the starting line, and we really don't know what we're going to do now, but you really need the program. You want to play the sport, you want to tell the players by the uniforms, you need the program. Here is the multi-100-page directory of post offices as of July 31st, 1964, Post Office Department publication annually. Wonderful guide. It tells you which post offices were open at that time. This is your checklist. And the objective of my collection is to obtain an envelope with the stamp postmarked May 29th, 1964 from each and every post office and every station in the country. And there were 34,084. Here it is from that document, broken down by state and by the size of the post office, first class, second class, third class, fourth class, and total by state, and then footed down here in the lower right, the total 34,084. That's your goal right there. I have about between 10 and 15% of these, so I have a long way to go. You'd say, well, I believe the government. I see Pete McClure laughing. I believe the government. Don't believe the government in this case. They don't include the ship cancels. That's not on that list because it's not a state. Okay, so how many ship cancels can there be on May 29th? Well, how about the Army and Air Force postmarks of soldiers overseas? And you say, well, come on, how many of those can there be? Oh, there could be quite a few. And now, how about the railway post offices? And railway post offices were canceled, railways were canceling mail from 1862 to 1978. And when that was diminishing, there were buses carrying the mail. That lasted from 1941 to 1974. Okay, so you add those into the 34,084, And that's your total. And you could calculate that number not so quickly. Well, it's postmarked in the US, and over there is the Mexican stamp, but it doesn't tie the US stamp. So Steve Brainerd, who was a good collector, we remember him fondly, the late Steve Brainerd, found one where the Mexican postmark overlaps the US stamp on May 29th. So now it's conceivable to add to this total by getting the US stamp postmarked in Mexico as a label next to the Mexican stamp. And there's Naco. And of course, you need another one here, and this Agua Prieta. So now, Mexico. Sounds pretty unusual. Let's go to Canada. And here's a doctor that went to Vancouver, British Columbia. The valid 5-cent rate in Canada, and the US stamp tags along. That must be one of a kind. It's unique. Be careful when you use the term unique. Here are 3 others. So it's not unique. This is, since I'm always trying to build my collection, some of these might be called trading bait. Now, the UN is another country. They issue their own stamps. These 3 stamps, the UN stamps, were placed on sale the same day as the US stamps. And it's on the UN cachet. It's rather interesting. Now, here we take the UN stamp at the UN, the US stamp, and we take it out to Queens to the World's Fair site and get it sort of dual cancel. It's a modern, interesting variety. Back to the cachets for our people who are going to prepare their envelopes with the May 29th postmarks, either going to Boston or locally. And these folks would go ahead and have blank cachets, and all sorts of varieties exist for these blank cachets. Then you submit this to the post office, and they up in Boston will affix the stamp and have it postmarked. Obviously, someone had this blank and just threw a stamp on there, and I don't know what they were doing. And there's a second person with the same thought. Ultimately, the first day of issue postmark is what you're seeking. Well, ideally, you want the stamp underneath the postmark, not by itself. Well, that's correct, but you do need someone that's going to be a little more diligent in applying the hand cancel. This is great locally, but Bonnie Miller hopefully was a child writing to her mother, because if she was not a child, she certainly was not a calligraphy major later in her life. Now, how many non-May 29th collectors, how do they approach these things? There are a number of collectors that had different approaches. Frank Spoon was a gentleman in Morristown, Tennessee. And in 1980, I purchased his collection of 1,600 different cities and about 900 duplicates. And you see his Pan Am gasoline motor oil business return address, corner card. Frank Spoon affixed newspaper articles and had them tied, overlapped with the May 29th from Morristown, Tennessee. And he took the newspaper and magazine notices and made little cachets. He also made an art craft cachet. And when he submitted a stack of these to be postmarked in Banner Elk, North Carolina, the stamp wasn't there, but the postmark was there. And there's Frank Spoon's rubber stamp address in the lower right. He produced a cachet. Let's go back. Artcraft has their little palette on the lower left, and it's an engraved cachet. This is a pirated version, probably a copyright violation. The palette is removed and it's offset printed. But Frank Spoon did correspond with people and prepared a number of these for trading bait. Another collector had a different approach. He made cachets, and this is Norman Erickson of Cedar Rapids, Iowa's cachet. He was a clerk in the Iowa Gas and Electric Company, and he knew that this stamp was coming out and was going to be placed on sale nationwide. So he asked his fellow clerks around the state to send him any incoming mail with bills enclosed. Take the bills, send it along, but please send me the blank envelopes. So someone up here in Redfield, Iowa, addressed it to the payment center in Guthrie Center, Iowa, and had it postmarked in Redfield, Iowa on May 29th. That was a very valuable and very happy grouping of about 100 different cities in Iowa. Well, May 29th was towards the end of the academic year. Dr. Jacobs, a professor at the University in Lawrence, Kansas, thought that he would have a proposition, make a proposition for his students. And the proposition was, if you provide an envelope with a May 29th cancellation, I'll give you a couple of extra points on the final examination. Thank you very much. And that's how he secured a number of these. And his daughter is still very active in the First Day Cover Act, in the topical world. Now, if you didn't prepare cachets, you maybe want to express your sentiments in the form of combination envelopes. In other words, show some creativities. No cachets here, but you may want to affix different stamps. Now, we look here at combinations, one stamp at a time. Now, we often ask the question, what was going on in this country at the time? What was life like in America in the 60s? Well, the minimum wage was $1.15 an hour. The average annual income was $6,000 per year. A gallon of gasoline cost 25 cents per gallon. The average house cost was $13,000. Dallas climbed into the top list of top 10 cities, and St. Louis dropped out. The cost of a movie ticket was $1.25. And Fortune's magazine list of the largest American companies, and you see we still have one stamp per envelope. I'm trying to keep both tracks interested, the stamp people and non-stamp people. So I don't know how this is working, but we're giving it a try. You see the thematic relationship. Presidents, there were 4 presidents who died in office. Political, historic, JFK's military past, lots of creativity. A lot of sentiment about the deceased president, the assassinated president. And you see these are all different stamps in combination. Well, in the list of, back to my generic non-philatelic list, the Fortune 500 companies, let's sort of list the top 10 and see how they've changed. General Motors, ExxonMobil, Ford, General Electric, Mobil Oil, US Steel, Texaco, Chrysler, Gulf Oil, and American Telephone and Telegraph. The economy certainly has changed. Some of these companies don't exist. And you see all different stamps in combination. And you see only one stamp in combination with a Kennedy stamp. As we wrap the one stamps, obviously, we're going to go to 2 stamps. A little more creative. Well, what were the top 3 most popular songs in 1964? Any guesses? Well, you can sing along, by the way, once I mention them. Love Me Do by the Beatles, and they appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show back in February. Number 2 in May of '64 was Chapel of Love by the Dixie Cups. Sing along if you want. And number 3 was My Guy by Mary Wells. So now we're going to go to 3 stamps in combination. I've got to learn how to walk and chew gum at the same time here. What were the top TV shows back then? The Munsters, Gilligan's Island, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Flipper. I'm embarrassed to say it was Flipper. And Dr. Kildare. Finally, let's ramp it up again from 3 stamps to 4 stamps if we must. And here we see seals. These are not stamps. These are seals of the 4 deceased presidents. 4 stamps. 4 stamps again, showing some creativity. Now we're going to go to 5 stamps. We can take it. And Artcraft, we see this one quite a bit. I think quite a few of these were made. 5 stamps. And then finally 6 stamps, a nice Farnham variety. And here we are at the end of the road of these combinations, thank goodness, with 12 stamps of deceased presidents. Well, now there were related name postmarks, not in Boston. Kennedy, New York. This was on the top of a pile of Kennedy, New York. They were made in some quantity. So collectors were eager to obtain envelopes postmarked May 29th, 1964, from various cities with the name related to John Kennedy. And yes, there's Kennedy, New York, and we have Kennedy, Alabama, and so on. Jack, Alabama. There are more than what I'm showing. Kennedy, Nebraska, autographed by the postmaster. Kennedy, Minnesota. And if you live in Harrison, Ohio, you just can't let go of Harrison, I gather. But Harrison, Ohio, that's the way it came. They didn't do a Kennedy cover that I could find. Now we were repurposing envelopes. If you didn't make your own cachet, you may want to grab another envelope, something that was related. So this was repurposed with an Inauguration Day postmark. And of course, the natural November 22nd postmark repurposed in Yonkers, Rochester, New York, Irvington, Newark and Irvington, and Denison, Texas. So now, if you want to grab envelopes and repurpose them, why not get your White House stationery? Or if you're in the government in Dallas, the director of aviation repurposed an envelope, sent it to Boston, they had it postmarked in Boston. Or if you want to take an old post office dedication from Viroqua, Wisconsin, have a good time. And for our friends at the John Fitzgerald Kennedy Library, this was a donation gift envelope from somebody in Chilhowie, Missouri, with presumably a check to the JFK Library. Let's hope it was a check, not just an empty envelope. Congressional representatives, certainly they take the opportunity to write to their constituents. There's a House of Representatives, and of course, here is a senator. Repurposing old envelopes. Take those old blank cachets and put them into action with your local non-Boston postmark. Here you go, and have a good time with repurposing your envelopes. This is real interesting. It's a 1939 cachet, slightly misregistered on the left. You see the black capital is not lined up in its white space. And 25 years later, it was repurposed to be postmarked. And more repurposing of these blank envelopes. Here's a blank Inauguration Day envelope that was never used on Inauguration Day, pressed into service on the first day of issue of the Kennedy stamp. Now you see all over the country. The Artcraft cachets, of course, they made a cachet for the Kennedy stamp. But people did save the old blank envelopes, whether they're from Canada, the old blank United Nations, more United Nations blanks repurposed. And we have more, yet more. And finally, we have local pride paste ups, I'll call that. And this commemorates Mr. Vickers, whose grandfather was the first cousin of John F. Kennedy's great-grandfather. I don't know how that worked, but there was local pride associated with that. Photograph pasted on the envelope. Here's another Fairbury, Illinois local pride envelope as well. Cachets, hand-painted. Ralph Dyer, fairly well known among first-day cover collectors, applied this for me. I was after the Hackensack, New Jersey postmark. And when we corresponded in 1983, he wrote me this letter, told me that he had a Fort Lee, a Hackensack, a New Jersey, New York, a Detroit, told me a bit about himself, and then told me that it would cost me $10 if I want the blank covers. Oh, and then he gave me the price, mentioned how we prepared everything, and then told me more about how he treated everything with Krylon. Fairly interesting, signed by Dyer back in '83. And here's the second cover that came along in that batch. There were other hand-drawn cachet efforts. Ulrich is a fairly difficult cachet to find. It's in the Malone cachet catalog. So it's added to my cachet collection, and I show it, pass along. It's a very nice cover. Local hand-painted cachets by unknown people. And then finally, we do look at people who collected first day covers. Curtis Patterson and Marge Finger were good friends, were fellow collectors, were senior in the American First Day Cover Society. And they prepared this cover, Kurt did. Mrs. Fred Eisman, Monty Eisman, later on moved to Houston from Tulsa. This is an Ulrich cachet as well from Sun City, California. George Combs, senior in the American First Day Cover Society for many years, lived in New Jersey, California, and then back to New Jersey. Barry Newton, former editor of First Days magazine. And we all know the next person, Lloyd DeVries, president of the American First Day Cover Society, who was born in Ossining, grew up in Ossining, and now lives in New Jersey. And of course, Henry Scheuer, son of Jack Scheuer, who was living in Montreal at the time, was servicing covers as well, but from Boston, not from other cities. Stamp dealers, they got in on the action as well. Mo Luff, the Spring Valley, New York cover dealer, used to carry lots of cover boxes. Lou Robbins, the auction agent. This was sent to him by a client from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Carl Dinnerstein had a store here in Manhattan. Stanley Frankel, pretty well-known United Nations dealer. Marilyn Nowak cut her teeth working for Frankel. Stampland and Covers, more dealers. Frank Herget in Buffalo, pretty well known. Saturn Stamp Company, not as well known. On the Troy Schenectady Road, Conquistador Stamps, the Applebaum auction firm. They have sent a bill out on the first day from Philadelphia. Some other dealers that may not be so well known, all from different cities, different stations. The National Stamp News, I think we forgot about them, but they made one in their home from where they were in Anderson, South Carolina. Stamp clubs got involved in all of this, and they took their blank envelopes and made cachets, many of them going to Boston. All stamp clubs, all different. And of course, this helps fill in some of the oddball towns. And then after that, we go to stamp shows. Let's take the blanks of past shows. Westpex, the fifth Westpex was in 1964. Let's press into action and get a postmarked in San Francisco. Here's another stamp show, cachet. This is pretty common, but why not? It's a stamp exhibition advertisement. And Garfield Perry in Cleveland, ongoing and still a pretty big show. Now, there are miscellaneous commercial uses. There was a reading club, Malden, Illinois. It's the only Malden I have or ever seen, but I'll take it on a commercial piece of mail. Game News, sure, let's correspond to Game News. A dentist wrote this to Game News. Eldred, Pennsylvania came in this fashion. Allstate Motor Club, possibly something like the AAA. And now we're going to pay our insurance companies. There you see the policy number, Pyramid Life Insurance, that's unusual. And there are more insurance companies out there that did receive first day of issue postmarks. And from insurance companies, well, you have to pay your gas bill, gasoline bill, heating oil or gas credit card. And then Gristedes here in New York, a supermarket chain still active in New York. Was this for a bill that you incurred, or was this a vendor? We don't know. Your department store. Let's do our banking. No electronic banking here. Bank by mail. So a lot of small towns, incoming mail, very helpful to receive those. And you had to pay your utility bill. And this is an opportunity for audience participation, because when you drove into Vinnie's Service Center out in Rosedale, Queens, and there you see the Rosedale station over the stamp in Jamaica, Queens, you can yell out of your window, "Hey, Vinnie." So this is a chance for all of you at home to yell, "Hey, Vinnie," in whatever accent you choose. Here's some more commercial covers. And how can you resist Stamps Arkansas? Stamps Arkansas, what a great name. And if you worked in a school district, you grab that empty envelope, that blank. Or Dartmouth, but why not the University of Pittsburgh? And if you worked at the Mayo Clinic, that's the Mayo Clinic address that's engraved by someone who worked in the Mayo Clinic. Back during this time period, when you checked into a hotel or motel, you'd open the center drawer on the dresser, and you would see an envelope with the hotel return address and matching stationery for you to write back home. We're having a great time here in Tucson, Arizona. And there are a number of hotel corner cards, as they're referred to, all securing postmarks in their location. Camden, Maine, there we go. Here's a highway post office, Hotel Yates, Utica, New York. And these are small hotels, obviously no longer around. The Greenbrier is still around in White Sulphur Springs. Nice engraved stationery. Very colorful. More hotel corner cards. And then I call these, typing your own commemoration, typing a cachet commemoration. And there are a few of these, and you did it in your own fashion, handwriting, crudely. But again, we're trying to obtain all of these postmarks, and they come in different ways, shapes, and forms. And of course, May was getting close to the November election, and there was a presidential campaign that was ongoing. So you've got a campaign for Barry Goldwater in '64, and here are a couple of examples there. Now, these envelopes go for anywhere from 50 cents to, on a good day, $10, $20, $30, maybe. So who would want to fake a postmark? They're clearly available. You have plenty of lead time. They were widely distributed. We've seen them from all over the place, but there are fake postmarks. And here's the third one. There's no way these look like anything that existed. But more interestingly, if people had collectors, friends overseas, or family members overseas, they might write to them with the stamp affixed on the first day of issue. And so the easy ones are Canada, only one stamp needed for Canada. Mexico, 5-cent rate. There's another Mexico. This is going to a foreign post office in San Francisco. Well, where is that? Back stamped in Agana, Guam on June 12th. 2 stamps to the Canal Zone, airmail. To Germany, another Army post office. Great Britain, Israel, Germany, Southern Rhodesia. The more stamps we affix, the more likely we're going to either see higher than first-class mail, like airmail, or more distant geographies. And this is going to Wales, Scotland, Sweden. We're still in the easy territory. Budapest, Hungary. Uruguay, fine. Israel airmail. Germany. Some duplication, but another one to England. Curacao, fine. France, that's easy enough. Sweden, still pretty easy to find these. Honduras. Guatemala. East Germany. Okay, we're starting to climb the ladder of difficulty in foreign destinations. India, Poland, the Netherlands, airmail, Turkey, Very nice, 5 to the cover. Norfolk Island, Australian territories. Now we're doing pretty well. The Transvaal in South Africa. East Pakistan. And the mother sent this envelope to her son who was serving in the Peace Corps. When the son finished his Peace Corps duty, he went back to Chicago, became an academic at the University of Chicago. And this was being offered because they were cleaning out their townhouse. And there are several of these around. Israel, again, this is airmail to Israel, 25 cents. New Zealand. And this is registered in some fashion. I don't know why it's got 7 stamps going to Italy. Now, if you have no stamps, because it was in a pile of envelopes, as we discussed before, and it slipped through the machine, they're going to detect that postage is due. And here's the rubber stamp from the post office department indicating that. Please pay your 5 cents postage due. Or here's the meter going from Troy to Schenectady. And a couple of days later, they collected the 5 cents postage due. Now, interested in you, here we go. Yes. When you send these envelopes, sometimes the back flaps are loose. The post office affixed the auxiliary marking received unsealed, sealed at the destination. And on the reverse side, they slapped on an official seal, in effect sealing the envelope. This innocent looking cover obviously had a loose back flap because on the reverse, they did the same thing for us. Here we go with a nice airmail usage, domestic usage from a small town in New Mexico. And here is a very nice usage. We see these quite often, actually on eBay, a rocket flight of some sort. But I've not seen too many where it says damaged by rocket fuel. So if you're going to damage it by rocket fuel, let's see it on the reverse as well. Here's a very nice envelope, a nice 50-cent Susan Anthony stamp and 3-cent Liberty and a strip of 4 of the 5-cent Kennedy. Registered, the date on the reverse, May 29th, Bronx, Mott Haven Station. Mott Haven Station's in the South Bronx. They were about ready to go through a pretty difficult time period, and the neighborhood really went downhill after this. An interesting change of address form that Ron DeHaas used when he was a teenager living in Youngstown, Ohio. Youngstown, Ohio, South Side Station. Ron DeHaas grew up and he went in the software business, and he has a website now that is in the software business. He also took a silver certificate and had the same postmark affixed to the stamp, tying the stamp to the silver certificate. And I didn't want to reproduce that in color, so it's dumbed down to black and white, and it's a terrible reproduction. Let's have fun. Let's take the stamp and get it postmarked, 4 stamps, 4 postmarks, 4 post offices, 4 different post offices in Indiana. But that's in 1 state. Let's do it in 3 states, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. Let's go run around, and if you take a look, they're all PM postmarks, so there was quite a bit running around there. Now we're going to go to some small towns, obscure towns, towns that you'd say, who are they? Where do they come from? What's going on here? Bumblebee, Arizona is a ghost town nowadays. Paul Clancy was a collector, and he went out and secured a number of these. Thank you very much. So this is a ghost town. North Pole, Alaska, there's Santa Claus. Paul Clancy cover, thank you. Anaktuvuk Pass population less than 300. These are different cities, part of the 34,084. Doctors Inlet, part of Jacksonville, Florida. At that time, it had an independent post office, real small town in Florida. And then how about obscure places like Grassy Butte, North Dakota, adobe covered sod roof. Okay. This looks like a sod roof, adobe, who knows what, autographed by the postmaster. I like that one. But the one I really like is Rowdy, Kentucky. Rowdy, Kentucky is in the Appalachians in eastern Kentucky. The post office was discontinued in 2011, and the town was changed to the name of Stacy, Kentucky. So the post office doesn't exist, and the town doesn't exist and Stacy doesn't have a post office. Rough and Ready, California. And here we go. How small can you get on these crazy things? You can find these postmarked on a single stamp. At the first Portland, Oregon APS show, there was a collection from a gentleman being offered who lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, and he was selling his bullseye postmarks on first day. And I immediately went to the Scott number 1246, this stamp, and identified and purchased what he had. Among them, Culver City, California, where the postmark is completely on the stamp. I'd like to replace it with a full-size envelope. I have not seen another Culver City. But that's only the stamp. What's the smallest size envelope? Well, here you go. There it is, sort of life size. And what could possibly be the largest envelope? This is a silver certificate replica in black and white. You see that I didn't take out the colors. And to get this proper scale, you see a 15-inch ruler at the bottom. So it measures what, 12 inches by 24 inches. First day of issue in Cleveland, Ohio. It's the largest first day cover that I have for this Scott number. And it's probably the proper cover to end this presentation with. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Anybody, we'll open it up. This is great. We'll open it up for any questions. You can unmute down in the lower left-hand corner. And I've got a part of the presentation as well ready. If we want to go back and look at any of the covers, feel free to fire away, open forum.
So Henry, how important is it for you to have your foreign destination covers backstamped?
It's quite important. It's very difficult sometimes. Some of the countries did backstamp things, but then you really want to get something with special services registered. I like to see them backstamped. Some of these are not backstamped, so I didn't just show all of them that are backstamped, but it's very important to have it backstamped.
Henry, you showed a deck card with that said 5,000 stamps. Have you? So that would be 100 sheets. Have you seen deck cards less than 5,000 stamps?
I'm not an expert in that area. I've not seen any other deck cards for the Kennedy other than this, and I don't know if deck cards for other issues exist for less than 5,000.
Oh, they do.
Okay. There were a lot of stamps produced. This was a record first day of issue postmark numbers in the millions, surpassing the World's Fair issue earlier that year. And there were hundreds of millions of stamps printed. And after the assassination, the country wished to commemorate and remember the president.
Many of the deck cards at the time did not have a quantity on it. Here's one I picked up, asked from Henry Gittner for the 4-cent Norris stamp that I collect, and it just says positively not to be placed on sale before July 1261. Having a quantity on it probably is unusual at that time frame, unlike today.
Thank you, Foster. Very interesting.
I got Gittner on this one, but I was glad.
Well, this last item that you saw was acquired from Henry Gittner. And on the first floor of his back barn, he has an oversized filing cabinet. I don't even think this fit in that filing cabinet. So transporting it home without damaging it was a big deal. But Henry Gittner is a source for some of these.
Henry, do you have a holy grail or more than one on covers you really want, postmarks you really want to get for your collection?
I knew you'd ask me that question, Lloyd. I knew you'd ask me that question. So here's my answer. I had to think about this. The cover I really want is the next one.
Henry,
Hi, Mick.
how do you organize an exhibit of such a broad, so many different covers? How do you choose what to show?
You must have been in my living room on the floor 2 Saturdays ago for about 3 hours. I stored the envelopes in glassine envelope boxes alphabetically by state, then by city. I have another box of number 10 size envelopes in plastics, flat. I have a ring notebook for the oversized covers. And the $75 savings bond is in an artist's portfolio of larger covers. The cover that was next to this cover was a full sheet of the 1931 Yorktown on first day. So you can imagine these are jumbo size. When I selected the covers, I went through my collection, anything that looked interesting. And then I spent 5 hours reorganizing it into something that made sense. And maybe this made sense today. Now you can come and visit me, Mick, and help me resort this and re-alphabetize and resort this back into my 20 glassine envelope boxes.
Well, you can see behind me my Army collection. And, you know, now that I'm starting to think about exhibiting, I'm just trying to figure out how to organize what I want to show.
I don't know if there's a proper way, but iterating this and revisiting and revisiting and revisiting, they say in exhibiting, and this was somewhat of an exhibit, you do put a lot of brain cells to work on how to best do it. It's real fun.
Yeah. Well, great presentation. Very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mick.
For Michael or Henry or both, is the PowerPoint going to be put in a Dropbox along with the video? So we can go through the covers at our leisure?
It sure will. Yep, we'll have the presentation available, both the recorded version as well as the deck itself. Yep,
There's quite a few I'd like to look at a little bit closer, so.
absolutely.
And if you're in New York and you want to spend about 4, 5, or 6 hours, or maybe 2 or 3 days, come on over. I don't hear any takers.
I've been there. Thank you.
Hi, Andy.
Hi, Henry. What was I going to ask you?
Make it difficult.
I try my best. I really do, you know, but as some of you who know me know, I'm just not generally that bright. So how many a year are you finding nowadays? As hard as you search for them, and I know how hard you search.
Well, thank you. That's a good question. The first thing I want to do after starting to obtain these things is organize a list of what I own. And in that process, about 15 years ago, I decided to track how many I would acquire each and every year. And I keep a tally. I figure if I can find 12 to 20, that's fine. I think this year I'm a little higher than that, not much. But it gets more increasingly difficult as time goes on because the old time collections have been dispersed. And particularly with the uncached covers, too many of them get lost and get destroyed. So
So there you go.
that's it.
What would be your smallest number of state, and what would be your largest number in state name?
The largest number, certainly over 400, is Ohio. And the smallest number are states like South Dakota, North Dakota, the usual suspects that have small populations, more rural, not as many urban collectors as a general stereotype. It's a function of population and presumed philatelic presence. Lots in New Jersey, lots in California, lots in New York. Actually, where you are in the North Country, in northern New York State, it's very difficult to find those. The Danamoras, the Osable chasms, speculators, good luck. Westport, good luck.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll find some for me.
Henry, question from Chris McIntosh. I don't know if you know this, the list of the Citizens Committee members that was on the back of that program, is that longer than normal because of the topic of the stamp? I counted quick. It's got to be at least 60 people on there.
Well, they had a big luncheon, a huge luncheon. And after reading the program, It was a who's who of people in Boston, affiliated with the Democratic Party, affiliated with Catholic Boston. He was the first Catholic president. And Statler Hilton, I don't know how many people were at that luncheon, but when you get to table 96, you've got quite a few. Seems like a large number. That's one for the Kennedy Museum.
Henry, the dual canceled cover that you showed from multiple states, is there any opinion? I mean, now who knows what happens, but 50 years ago, to get a cancel, did you have to be there on that day, on that time? Unlike today with who knows what happens?
Well, yes, beginning in the, I guess, the mid 70s, you had the grace period at the designated city. But always, it seems always, that you cannot approach your, certainly on a machine cancel basis, you cannot approach postal officials and say, please postmark this on a different day. These are legal postmarks for bill paying purposes and all of that sort of thing. Back then, that was probably more rigorously adhered to than it might be today. Hand cancels, possibly there's some tinkering possibilities, much less likely on machine cancel, but even hand cancels, no, these are commercial cancels.
Okay. So someone on that cover did a lot of traveling that day.
Well, there were a number of collectors who would go around their county and secure a postmark from each place in their county.
Okay. Thank you.
And most people did it on different covers, though, not the same. They would have a different cover prepared for each town. They didn't do
Yes,
it. They didn't do the same.
They take a stack of 20 or 50 envelopes and knock themselves out. Now, imagine if I could approach the post office of my choice around mid-April, late April, and I would go up and say, hey, could you please give me an April 13th postmark on this envelope going to the Internal Revenue Service, even though we're at the end of April? No, it's a legal postmark, and they want to, you know, there's some regulations around that discourage that practice severely.
Henry, on that 3-state one, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, do you remember the 3 cancels?
I do not remember. I think Mike Lake can go back to them. And the next question, the derivative question that you pose is, well, what kind of distance do these people have to travel?
Having driven through southern Wisconsin and Minnesota a couple of times, and maybe Pete can tell us where Dorchester, Iowa is.
Well, let me speak and say that La Crosse, there's a major bridge that goes over the Mississippi River, and it's just about the point where Minnesota and Iowa have their border.
And I was just about to talk.
That would be a fairly easy thing to do in a day, an afternoon.
Just about to mention that bridge because I've been across it in 2019 and 2021 when I went out to Minnesota Stamp Expo. And La Crosse is again just into Wisconsin. I guess I need to pull up Google Maps on the other 2 there.
Well, I'm assuming they're just on the other side of the river.
Yeah.
And that's one of the fun things when you run into a new postmark, it teaches you geography. Go look on Wikipedia, go look on a map, see where it is, and ask yourself, well, gee, I wonder if I'll ever get there. Will I ever travel to that town? And some of these places, you've definitely got to say, no, I don't think I'll ever get to some of these places. But some of these places we've been to, obviously, we're familiar with them.
One of the new 7171s I found this year was from a small town, literally about 100 feet into Iowa from Minnesota.
Wow.
And I guess Pete initially found the Google Maps. The post office is discontinued, but we could figure out the building that had to be the post office because there are signs where there used to be a satellite dish there.
Okay, well, you know.
Those are the fun ones to look up.
And of course, since 1971 and for your issue, Foster, and since 1964, the country has moved around. Many of the suburbs have grown through the roof. Victorville, California comes to mind. It's grown from a population of 10, 20,000 to over 100,000. Some corresponding cities have just sort of atrophied. Bumblebee, Arizona is now a ghost town, literally.
Henry, I didn't ask you this when we were going through it, but those last ones from Clancy, where he has the cancellations from like Bumblebee and North Pole, would he have sent those to the post office, do you think? Or do you think he had somebody that went up there on his behalf?
He lived back east here. So since they're addressed to him back east and he had ample time, many people sent these stamps with a request, could you please hold these and have them postmarked May 29th? So the receiving post office had to retain the blank envelope without the stamp. The money had to be remitted. The postmaster had to cooperate by applying and affixing a stamp to each envelope, placing it in the mail stream with the May 29th envelope, having come back to him addressed. But Clancy looks like he just did a lot of sending out envelopes.
Going back to that 3-state cover, Dorchester, Iowa is just over the border, but Elizabeth, Minnesota is almost in North Dakota. It's just before Fargo, North Dakota. Today from Elizabeth, it's a 5.5 hour drive.
It's not Elizabeth, Minnesota. It's Eitzen, E-I-T-Z-E-N, and that is down in southeastern Minnesota.
Can you say that name again?
It's E-I-T-Z-E-N.
I read it wrong. That case, so I'll just say use the famous line from Saturday Night Live. Never mind. You're right. You're from Minnesota. You know the geography better than I do.
I'm from about 80 miles from there or thereabouts.
So do you have any predates? Were they ever known? Sometimes they're genuine predates, and sometimes they're predates where the postmaster or whoever's canceling it just forgets to change the date.
That's a very good point. There were 4 in there. There are 2 different conditions of postmarks before the designated first day. Most people say, well, anything before the designated first day is a predate, but there could be misdated covers. I don't have any. A misdated cover would be dated before the stamps were shipped. I don't have any misdated before May 21st, where that Messina wrapper was. But you see here that, thank you, Mike, the May 25th, May 26th, May 27th, and May 28th. But so I do have 4 predates. I think I have a few more.
Back one slide on that. I thought that was a Rose Stanko cover. And by the way, Rose is, I remember right from Roy Mooney, is actually a male. Well, he did lots of covers for 7171.
Yeah. Rose Stacco did a lot for JFK, a lot of different cities. With that similar wording, cachet, and the words pertain to the postmark, name of the town. So she slid the typeface in quite a bit.
Henry, what about Alaska and Hawaii? Are they hard?
Once you get outside the big cities, it gets real difficult. In Honolulu, you can get the stations, but start going to the outer islands, it gets real tough. Alaska, not quite as difficult, but there are many small towns in Alaska where you can only reach them by plane. And there are plenty of places out there when you start looking at smaller towns that are almost impossible to find. Again, back to the list of 34,000 post offices. I am lacking about 300 to 400 towns that have over 10,000 people. So that means all the other thousands are very small towns. Many of them are remote areas, off the beaten path. And they've got to have collectors present themselves that day to secure the postmark.
Henry, is that 34,000 not counting branches? But for 7171, there's 39,000.
That counts branches. In that publication, they are listed. The towns are listed in order by state and city, and then they go into the branches. They count the branches as well. And on that chart, you saw the first class through fourth class post offices. So it does-
Curious why the number was only 34,000 and not probably more than 39,000.
Very good question, but you do have quite a fair amount of population growth going on in this country.
But generally, they were closing post offices rather than opening them.
You'd think, absolutely.
For example, in New York, I was looking at New York, I see 1726, and there's about over 2,400 known in 7 towns for 7171.
Yeah.
So I think this may not be a complete list, but it may be the only one we have.
Well, it's a post office department document, so that's a source document that I'm using. There may be a better list, but that's, as you say, maybe the only one we have. And it's a good roadmap. If I find things that are unlisted, I'll be much more intrigued.
Do you know, Henry, like what the list in theory, like what all the possibilities are, like individually?
I keep 3 lists. 1, what I own. 2, any sightings or people who have told me they had certain things, but they didn't want to trade them. And the 3rd list are cities over 10,000. So that when I see a town, I ask the question, do I have it? If not, is it known to me? If not, how big was the town? So I know of about 300 or 400 others, and I've been collecting these for about 40 years. I try to find them and I try to communicate and carry on an active correspondence. There are many more, obviously. My biggest competitor is the trash can.
The list only shows one post office in the District of Columbia. Would we assume from that it may be an abbreviated list of some type?
I think you've got a good point, because there are different stations, as we know, in the district. So that 34,000 may be a larger number.
Any other questions we have out there? Unmute down lower left if so.
Henry,
Hi, Bradford.
how you going?
Doing well.
You're talking about some of the collectors. And one that I have a lot of is the Reverend Roger Hauser or Hooser.
Yes.
All over the US, I've got covers from him. Did he have divine intervention, or how did he get all these covers from different places?
Well, I think he hopped a roo and bounced around a lot. I think he had contacts all over the country. Many other reverends did write to him. The Rowdy, Kentucky cover is addressed to him in ink. How he communicated with people to send him envelopes, the handwritten envelopes, I don't know, but many that I've seen are typewritten. So he must have communicated with people in advance all over the place. Hundreds and hundreds of cities, hundreds.
Thank you.
There was a time in the 60s and 50s where pen pal situations were very, very popular with people, particularly in small towns. I can remember having a pen pal in Hawaii when I was in the 4th grade, which was back in the 50s. And we were encouraged to have those to learn letter writing skills and to do things like that. So sometimes these people, just extrapolated those, and the list grew and grew and grew. And you write a pen pal and say, do you know anybody else that might be interested in sending me something? And so there could be a connection to that.
Yeah, before the stamp is issued, you'd need that pre-existing network. After the stamp is issued, many collectors banded together and started trading among each other. And you would go back and look in the stamp publications or First Days publication or the Bureau Specialist, the Bureau Issue Association magazine, and you'll see people having little adlets requesting trades. Frank Spoon had backup duplicate trading material. So there were many people who trade among each other.
Going back to the Washington DC comment, on 7/1/71, there were 46 post offices in Washington DC, according to the first edition of Roy Mooney's catalog, where he actually lists all the post offices that existed in 1971. And Henry, if you ever need a copy of it, I can probably run it through the scanner.
Okay, that'd be great to see.
So
Actually, it'd be great to see for the entire country, because Roy Mooney was a student of the July 171 Scott 1396 issue and went to town on it.
he got the post office list from Washington, and there are probably only 10 or 15 that have been discovered that weren't listed in that original listing from July 1st, 1971. So it's surprisingly accurate.
Well, yeah, you've got to spend a lot of time getting the material and getting the information, certainly.
One question
Henry,
from, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Henry, going back to your overseas destinations, I noticed you had Norfolk Island, Territory of Australia. What about Australia?
I think I do have Australia. I think I do have an Australia kicking around. Maybe I don't. I have to look at my list.
Let me know and I'll send you one if I've got one.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from obscure countries? Anyone from Bhutan that can make the same offer?
Less exotic. Do you have one from Fort Lee, New Jersey?
Yes, that's the Dyer hand painted. That was the second die. Yeah, that's the second cover I showed in the Dyer. And
As Henry and I were discussing on the phone the other night, Dyer lived in Fort Lee at the time.
Yes, I don't recall the address, but I remember seeing it on covers. He's was about 3 blocks away from where I am now.
there are, Mark, there are a number of towns between Fort Lee and Middletown, New York, that I don't have. So maybe we'll have to stop in some of those towns.
Question from Chris McIntosh. Henry, if you were collecting a first day cover of a lesser known issue, would you use the same divisions of post offices, number of stamps, etc.? In your opinion?
What's appealing about this issue is the fact that it's a nationwide release. So I'm not collecting any unofficial cities because there is no such thing. They're designated all as being official. It's a simultaneous nationwide release. And just as importantly, they were distributed fairly widely. Other issues that had nationwide releases, like Elvis Presley, were distributed maybe not quite as widely. And the passion in the country was not as great because the Kennedy issue was placed on sale just a very few months, his next birthday after he was assassinated. Elvis's stamp came out a few years after his passing. So the answer is no, I'm not going after other issues with this fervor because of those reasons.
My question, Henry, really had to do with if you were collecting some other stamp issue, would you use the same process that you have gone through with a stamp that maybe is not so well known, but you still might collect it? Somebody has postmarked it from Anthony, Kansas, let's say, or you might look for Alberta, Canada, or you might look for a combo cover that has another stamp attached to it. It's the process I was asking about. If you would use that with any collector rather than just this one that was nationwide.
Yes, in fact, I do. I collect back to 1851, but I do like the 2-cent red era, which really was roughly what, 1923, 1931, and I collect unofficial cities for those. So I attempt to obtain postmarked unofficial cities in that time frame. The foreign destinations, I do have a foreign destination collection from the beginning of time till now, and that collection really tries to obtain an envelope postmarked on the first day from an official or unofficial city from each country as early as possible. So Canada is an easy country, one would think, an easy destination. So that ends up being an earlier issue. Burkina Faso, a more difficult issue. South Georgia, a more difficult issue. It might be in 1960s or 70s. But I do focus on the 2-cent reds and collect in that fashion. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions out there?
Mike, there are a couple in the chat box you might want to take a look at.
I think I asked all of these.
Someone asked if they can email Henry about the known existence of
Oh, yeah,
covers in specific cities.
certainly can.
Sure. Be very happy to correspond with anyone. And the email address is henryinnewyork@gmail.com. Spell out the word in New York, Henry in NEWYORK@gmail.com. Keep those cards and letters coming.
These days, Henry, do you get most of your new acquisitions from people looking for on your behalf, or do you find them yourself in boxes and dealerships?
I haven't been to too many stamp shows and going to too many boxes recently. I obtain these at auction sometimes, the AFDCS donation auction. I obtain them from dealers, from other collectors, and from the internet. And I will travel to dealers who have substantial inventories of some of these things.
Anybody else out there?
I welcome anyone emailing me any scans of any covers they might have. It will be interesting to see.
Yep, I've put your email in the chat box as well, that you spelled out.
Great.
Not seeing anybody. All right, well, we got to give a plug here for the AFDCS. Those of you that are not members, any of you that are left that are not members, this is the information to join to get involved. Beyond these programs, there's a terrific First Days magazine that comes out 6 times a year, online access to 10 years worth of issues, full archives, and the ability to connect with members such as ourselves who collect these. Convention every year. The price of membership is a bargain when you compare it to a lot of other societies for what you get. So afdcs.org is the web address. So yeah, Henry, thank you very, very much. This was tremendous.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you very, very much for watching, and hope to hear from all of you soon.
I put in a quick commercial for the AFDCS auction.
You may.
It closes next Sunday night at 11:59 Eastern time. There's about 1,000 lots. And this morning, there were about 400 of them without bids. I don't think there's any lots of JFK covers, but if anyone collects Carol Gordon, there's 90 lots of Carol Gordon covers. So bid early, bid often.
Thank you, sir. All right, well, this presentation, as I said, will be available recording as well as the slides. Probably give us about a week and a half or so to get that up and accessible, and but you can reach it off the website, afdcs.org. We'll have it linked off of there. So with that, thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you, Henry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you, Bradford.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Henry.
Thank you very much for watching.